Hello and welcome to the Calmcast, a time to feel calm and think clearly. I'm Claire Downham, the Queen of Calm, a transformational life coach. I was a burnt out head teacher who finally made the journey to calm after years of trying, and I want to prevent you from having to do the same. The Calmcast is a series of short explorations, gently guiding you back to your natural state, which is calm and clarity. Just listen like you would listen to music, with an open mind and curiosity. There's nothing else to do. Now let's relax into today's episode. So today I'm exploring the connection between perfectionism and procrastination. Over the last week or so, I've been talking a lot about procrastination. And I think for me, the perfectionism piece did come into it. And I would now call myself, I think, a recovering perfectionist. There are some things that I'm very kind of one and done about. So it doesn't bother me that I mess up my words when I'm talking to you on these sessions, and I do quite a lot of training videos and audios and things like that, and I don't get too tied up about little errors. And I want to be seen as human. I don't want people who are coming to work with me to think they've got to be perfect. By me being perfect, I almost think it can feed into it. And what's coming to mind as I'm saying that is my own kind of journey with my career in education and the leaders who I worked with, who either made me feel like headship was a possibility for me, or could have made me think it wasn't. So the first head that I worked for, who really made me see that it was possible for me to be a mum with two children who were had busy lives and their own careers, in fact, from a very young age in theatre and television and film, and be a head teacher as well, because she was just a few years older than me. Her kids were a few years older than mine, and she was doing taking the kids to swimming and dancing competitions and all these other things, similar things that I was doing. I wasn't doing the swimming, thank God for that, because that is a 5 a.m. job, isn't it, the swimming? So I'm glad I didn't end up doing that. But she helped me to see, by being not by being perfect, but by just seeing that it was okay to not get it right all the time, and she could fit it in. And then I worked for another head teacher who was so good at his job, but he didn't have any other things going on in his life. So it looked like, oh goodness, to be perfect at this headship thing, you've got to be not really have a life and spend too many hours at work and things. But luckily I kind of saw my way through that and did become a head teacher, which I do say still is something lucky. Even though I was a head teacher when I burnt out, I still think it was right for me and part of my journey. And I did impact on lives when I was doing that. So it's so for me, I remember, I think for me it connects a little bit to what I've talked about before about imposter syndrome, where, well, if I make this thing perfect, it's going to be okay. But how does it connect to procrastination is the question, really. And I think it's because as soon as you have an idea about what something would be like if it was perfect when it was finished, you then have to, then starting that thing can just be too much. Or even if you do get started on it, it can be too much to finish it, because you're picking at every little piece of it in order to make it perfect. And so the pace at which you can get things done, or the fact that you just keep thinking about that thing that you want to be perfect, and then just going, oh, it's just too much. It's just too much. And again, it's always the thinking about it, isn't it? Because in fact, even if you wanted to make it perfect, we're going to talk about what that means in a minute. Well, you still the idea of what it feels like to do that is we're getting way ahead of ourselves, aren't we? We always are with procrastination. Procrastination is always to do with the future thinking and what we think something is going to feel like when we do it. and being kind of caught up in, well, I don't feel okay, so I can't do this thing. I won't be able to do it. It's all very much caught up in the future. So let's just talk about perfect, even as a concept. And this is going to connect into separate realities quite a bit, I think, because, well, there are things all the time. Like Bruce and I, we live in a house together, just the two of us most of the time. Very occasionally there's other people, but mostly just the two of us. And we both have different ways of doing things. And anybody who lives with other humans, you will understand how this can be. That other humans don't do things how we do them, do they? And how sometimes that can be a little annoying. So, let's just take two jobs in the kitchen, a job in the kitchen, where I would do it one way and Bruce would do it. So my idea of this job done to perfection, or to being right, it's right, that's how Claire kind of views the world, is very different perhaps to Bruce's idea about it being perfect and right and done to the right standard. So where is, like, that word is really an illusion, isn't it? Like, it's somebody's imagination. It's somebody's idea about what's right. It isn't what's right, what's perfect. That there is no such thing. It's not a definitive thing. It's not a measurable thing. It's not like, gravity is always the same force and it works in the same way all around the world, whether I'm in, here or the other side of the world, in Australia or New Zealand or somewhere. Gravity is working exactly the same all around the planet. There are no places where gravity doesn't work that way. However, perfect is, well, I would have thought that perfect has probably got, millions of different versions, because it's going to be just perfect for one person. And you might think, have you had that really, where you've done something to the point where you think it's absolutely perfect and it's not for other people? In fact, what's funny, I've got an actual story about this that happened to me in the last week. Over the weekend, actually. I was catching up on my messages on LinkedIn, which, if you have ever messaged me on LinkedIn and I've not replied, really sorry, but I'm just not very good at keeping up with them. But I've had a real kind of focused on it over the last couple of days. And I got a message from a lady who was some kind of branding person or some kind of VA or something, who basically messaged me and said, I've taken some of your, quite frankly, not very good posts on LinkedIn, and I have redesigned them for you so they'll be better. And I'd like to email them to you. I was just laughing because I thought, well, first of all, very ballsy approach, very kind of forward, kind of to do that kind of thing. But also, like, it's just her opinion, isn't it? Like, I like what I put out. I don't see it as perfect. I think it reflects my imperfection, perhaps. I put some stuff out on social media, mostly on LinkedIn, and it just goes out how it goes out. But how interesting then that she saw the imperfections in what I did and proposed. And I would possibly look at her designs. I'm clearly not going to give her my email address, but I could look at her designs and think, ugh, they're awful. And, I see things on social media, I just think, oh, that's not a very good graphic or whatever. But it's just my opinion. It's literally got... So when we're trying to make something perfect, how is that measured? How do we know that it's perfect? How do we decide that it's perfect? And who decides? And what's the measure? And it isn't definitive. There is no definitive perfect. And so if we're trying to, and I suspect this is what underpins this idea of perfection, is we're trying to please other people. We're perhaps trying to attract other people to be our clients or connect with other people in some way. or creating a product that we'd like people to buy and see as perfect, that is almost impossible. But here's what's can be useful, is that if you do something and put it out there, well, you might get a bit of feedback, and then you can have another go and do it again and get a bit of feedback. Clearly, which I'm not going to take on board from the woman who messaged me on LinkedIn, but I'm open to it from somebody I'm actually connected to on a more kind of connected basis in the first place. So it's I think where we're peeling back the layer here is that there's no way of knowing whether there is no such thing as perfect. So if the idea of making something perfect is stopping you from doing something and is causing the procrastination, because the size of it to make it perfect feels so overwhelming, then this place to start is right back at the beginning, where to understand there is nothing perfect. And that doesn't mean that we don't do our best. It doesn't mean that we don't kind of, tidy things up and make sure our posts are grammatically correct and bits like that. But nobody cares if you don't really. That's the other thing about judgment and perfectionism, isn't it? Is that it's tomorrow's fish paper, as we used to say when something went wrong in somebody's life and they ended up in the newspaper. So it's tomorrow's fish and chip paper. Of course, they don't use newspaper for ration from fish and chips anymore, do they? But it's gone. It's fleeting. Somebody's judgment of you, they're on to judging the next thing within seconds. So yeah, there's lots to explore about this. I'm going to explore this a little bit more this week. So watch this space, because I think the perfectionism thing is something for many of us, and does hold us back from putting ourselves out there and doing things that would be beneficial to us, our businesses, and all sorts of other things. So I hope you found that interesting. Have a lovely day. Lots of love and take care. Thank you so much for listening. There's nothing to do now but bring some awareness to how this is working out in your life. Listen regularly to experience longer and longer periods of calm. This has been the Calmcast with Claire Downham, Queen of Calm. Take care and keep listening.